I'd been working the overnight shift at a large, dimly lit distribution warehouse for almost a year. It was a cavernous space on the industrial edge of town, a steel and concrete labyrinth of towering shelves. The air always smelled of cardboard, diesel, and industrial cleaner. My job was simple: operate a forklift, move pallets, and ensure everything was in its right place before the day crew arrived. It was solitary work, which suited me fine. Most nights, the only sounds were the high-pitched hum of the distant chillers, the groan of the building settling, and the low rumble of my forklift. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., I was the only one working in the main warehouse. The security guard, an older guy named Frank, mostly stayed in his office by the main entrance, doing a full round every 2 hours. He'd pass by my area around midnight and 4 a.m., give a little wave, and continue his predictable circuit. The warehouse itself was massive, the size of a few football fields, with most of the lights kept off to save energy. Most aisles were bathed in a perpetual twilight, only fully illuminated by my forklift's powerful headlights. I knew the layout by heart, every shortcut, every blind corner. The isolation never bothered me, it was peaceful. I'd listen to podcasts through one earbud, the routine predictable, almost meditative. My break was around 3 a.m. in the small, brightly lit break room, a brief return to normalcy before plunging back into the echoing quiet. One Tuesday night in late October, a few weeks after the clocks had changed, something felt different. It was a collection of tiny, dismissible things. I found a pallet of cleaning supplies in an aisle meant for electronics. Later, I noticed a heavy wrench on the floor in the middle of a main thoroughfare, far from the maintenance bay. I picked it up and moved on, but the out-of-place objects created a subtle sense of disruption. The first truly unsettling event happened around 20:15 a.m. I was stacking a tall pallet, my focus entirely on the delicate balance. As I lowered it into place, a faint shadow caught my eye at the periphery of my vision, down at the very end of the aisle where the emergency exit was. I glanced over, but saw nothing but deep gloom. I chalked it up to fatigue. But then, as I pulled the forklift back, I saw it again, a flicker of movement. Clearer this time. It looked like the dark shape of a person, ducking back around the corner of a shelving unit, as if to avoid my headlights. My heart gave a little lurch. I cut the engine, plunging the aisle into near silence, and called out, "Hello, Frank, is that you?" My voice echoed unnervingly. No reply, just the drone of the chillers. I drove slowly down the aisle, my headlights cutting a bright path through the shadows. The emergency exit door was secured. I tried to dismiss it, but a cold knot of unease had formed in my stomach. The peaceful isolation now felt exposed. The next night, the feeling returned, stronger. I was in a different section, counting inventory on foot, when I heard a soft, distinct click. It sounded exactly like a camera shutter. I froze. The sound had come from behind a stack of boxed appliances, a few aisles over. It was too specific to be my imagination. I slowly, carefully, moved around the towering shelves. Nothing. I tried to convince myself it was a relay switch, but the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I started scanning the tops of the shelves as I worked, a new sense of paranoia creeping in. Around 4 a.m., as I was driving the forklift down a central thoroughfare, I saw it. Up high, on the very top shelf of a particularly tall stack, a shelf that hadn't been accessed in weeks, there was a figure. It was partially obscured by boxes, but I could make out the dark shape of a head and shoulders looking down at me. It wasn't moving, just watching. My blood ran cold. I slammed on the brakes, the forklift lurching to a halt. I stared, my heart hammering. Was it a mannequin? A pile of old uniforms? It was too dark to tell for sure. I reached for the high beam switch on the forklift, my fingers trembling, and flicked it on, flooding the upper shelf with brilliant white light. The space between the boxes was empty. It was gone. I felt a crushing wave of dread. Someone was in here with me. Panic began to set in. I fumbled for my phone and called Frank's extension. It rang and rang. No answer. I tried his cell. Straight to voicemail. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I was truly alone. I drove the forklift towards the aisle, where I'd seen the figure, needing some kind of confirmation. My headlights illuminated something on the concrete floor, a single black glove. Not an industrial work glove, but a thin, tactical-looking one. This confirmed it. Someone was here. My first instinct was to flee, but the main doors were locked. I had to find Frank. I slowly began to drive down the central aisle, scanning every dark recess. Then, I heard a faint scraping sound from the upper levels of the shelves, not too far ahead. Suddenly, a heavy cardboard box crashed to the floor directly in front of my forklift, exploding with a deafening bang. It had been pushed. My eyes shot up, and there, silhouetted against a distant emergency light, was the figure again. A man wearing dark clothing and a hood. He was looking directly at me. Then, slowly, he raised a hand and pointed at me. A primal fear seized me. I threw the forklift into reverse and backed away as fast as it could go. He turned and disappeared back into the shadows of the shelves. I spun the forklift around and floored it, heading for the main entrance and the security office. It was a long drive, and I imagined him moving through the labyrinthine aisles, trying to cut me off. I didn't look back. I jumped off the forklift before it even fully stopped and ran for the security office door, fumbling with my master keys. I burst inside. The office was empty. The lights were on, the bank of monitors displaying grainy images of the warehouse. But Frank was nowhere to be seen. His chair was pushed back, a half-empty coffee mug on the desk, still warm. I grabbed the emergency key fob for the main pedestrian door. As I turned, I saw it on one of the security monitors, a live feed from the aisle I had just come from. In the corner of the screen, the dark silhouette of the figure was standing there, staring directly into the camera. He knew where I was. I sprinted for the pedestrian door, jammed the key fob in, and wrenched it open, bursting out into the cool night air. I ran across the empty parking lot to my car, got in, locked the doors, and sped away. Miles down the road, I pulled over, my whole body trembling, and called 911. The police arrived and found the warehouse as I'd left it. They found Frank an hour later, bound and gagged with packing tape in a storage closet in the back of the building. He was terrified but unharmed, ambushed from behind during his midnight round. They found the discarded box and the black glove, but the intruder had vanished. I never went back to that warehouse. I still feel a chill when I'm alone in a large, empty space. The quiet no longer feels peaceful. It feels pregnant with unseen threats. My name is Sarah, and for 2 years I worked the night shift as a nurse in the critical care unit of a busy metropolitan hospital. The hours, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., were brutal, but I loved the quiet intensity of the unit after visitors left. It was a specialized floor, only 8 private rooms, for patients with serious conditions requiring constant monitoring. The air always smelled of antiseptic and the strong, burnt coffee we brewed to survive the night. The fluorescent lights at the nurse's station hummed with a constant, comforting drone. My routine was structured: get handover, check on my patients, administer medications, monitor vitals, and chart every little change. Most nights, it was just me and one other nurse, maybe a resident doctor on call, and a unit secretary. The hospital itself grew quiet at night, the daytime bustle replaced by a hushed stillness, broken only by the squeak of our shoes on the polished floors. There was one particular patient, an elderly woman in her late 80s named Mrs. Gable, recovering from major cardiac surgery. She was in room 3B, directly across from the nurse's station, because she had a tendency to become disoriented and try to get out of bed. Mrs. Gable was sweet, though often confused, whispering about her childhood. Her daughter would visit every day, leaving a small sachet of lavender on her bedside table to help her rest. I'd check on her every hour, ensuring she was comfortable and her bed alarm was active. It was a particularly slow night. A light snow was falling outside, muffling the city. Around 1 a.m., the other nurse was on her break, and I was charting. The only sound was the click of my keyboard and the distant, rhythmic beeping of monitors. Suddenly, I heard a very soft, rhythmic thumping. Thump, thump, thump. It was almost imperceptible, seeming to come from room 3B. My first thought was that Mrs. Gable was kicking the bed rail. I quickly got up and pushed her door open gently. Mrs. Gable was sound asleep, her breathing even. The room was perfectly still. I stood there for a moment, listening, but the sound had stopped. I attributed it to the old hospital's plumbing and returned to my desk. About an hour later, the thumping started again, louder this time. Thump, 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 thump. It was definitely coming from room 3B, and it sounded deliberate, like someone knocking softly on the wall. My unease grew. Mrs. Gable was too frail to make that sound. I walked back to her room, pushing the door open more forcefully. The thumping immediately stopped. Mrs. Gable was still asleep. I felt a prickle of fear on my neck. I carefully closed the door and went back to the station. The next night, my shift was uneventful for the first few hours. Then, around 1:30 a.m., I heard it again. Thump, thump, thump. It was louder, more insistent. And there was another sound underneath it, a soft, muffled scratching. Thump, scratch, thump, scratch, thump, scratch. My heart hammered in my chest. I went to room 3B, took a deep breath, and pushed the door open. The sound stopped instantly. Mrs. Gable was asleep, but something was wrong. The heavy window, always securely latched, was slightly ajar, letting in a draft of frigid air. And on the floor beneath the window was a small, crudely drawn stick figure in chalk. My blood ran cold. Gable was too weak to even sit up, let alone unlatch a window and draw on the floor. I slammed the window shut, my hands shaking, and wiped away the chalk drawing. I called security. They searched the room and the roof directly above, but found nothing. No footprints in the snow on the ledge. No signs of forced entry. They suggested a disturbed visitor, but the explanation felt hollow and left me deeply unsettled. The following night, I approached my shift with extreme trepidation. My anxiety was a live wire in my gut. Around 4 a.m., as I was charting, I heard a faint, dragging sound from the hallway, just outside room 3B. Scrape, scrape. I looked at the security camera for that hallway. It was empty, yet the sound continued. Then it stopped, replaced by a soft, ethereal whisper right outside her door. A breathy, drawn-out sish. I grabbed a heavy metal clipboard and slowly walked towards the hallway. The air grew noticeably colder as I neared the room. I peered around the corner. The hallway was empty, but the door to room 3B was now wide open. The dim night light above Mrs. Gable's bed was off, plunging the room into near darkness. I knew I hadn't left it like that. I slowly approached the doorway. I looked inside. Mrs. Gable was not lying down. She was sitting bolt upright, her eyes wide, staring directly at me. Her mouth was agape in a silent scream, her face a mask of pure terror. Her frail, bony finger was pointing, not at me, but at the corner of the room behind her, in the deepest shadow. I froze, my eyes following her trembling finger. I strained to pierce the darkness, and then I saw it. Two small pinpricks of red light, glowing faintly in the corner. They looked like eyes, low to the floor, as if something was crouching there. As I stared, paralyzed by horror, one of the eyes slowly blinked. A raw scream of terror tore out of my throat. I turned and ran, shaking the sleeping unit secretary awake as she hit the emergency alarm. Within minutes, the unit was flooded with staff. They found Mrs. Gable, still sitting upright, but she was gone. She had suffered a massive heart attack. They searched the room and found nothing. My account of red eyes was dismissed as stress and fatigue. But the next day, a cleaner found a faint dusting of chalk on the floor in the corner Mrs. Gable had been pointing to. I resigned a week later. I couldn't bear to walk those halls at night. Even now, when I'm in a dark room, I swear I can sometimes see those two small, glowing red pinpricks in the corner. I worked the night shift at a 24-hour gas station for 2 years during college. It was on a desolate 2-lane state highway, surrounded by miles of dark fields. From 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., it was just me, the buzzing hum of the coolers, the smell of stale coffee, and the vast, oppressive darkness outside. The station had 3 pumps, a small store, and a grimy bathroom out back. My nights were a slow crawl of restocking, sweeping, and waiting. Lots of waiting. The isolation was intense. An hour or more could pass without a single car. I'd read textbooks under the counter or just stare out at the empty highway. The only interaction was with a handful of truckers and late-night commuters. The security camera system was ancient and grainy, covering only the entrance, register, and pumps. The edges of the lot were complete blind spots. Most nights were crushingly uneventful. One particularly foggy Tuesday night, around 2 a.m., a beat-up, dark sedan pulled up to pump number 3. This was unusual. Pump 3 was the furthest from the store, and its card reader was notoriously finicky. The fog was a solid white wall, swallowing the light from the station's canopy. A man got out. He was tall and unnaturally thin, dressed in an oversized, dark hooded sweatshirt that completely obscured his face. He moved with a strange, gliding gait, his feet seeming to barely touch the pavement. He filled his tank, paid with cash at the pump, and then, instead of getting back in his car, he just stood there. He stood by the pump for a long moment, staring out into the fog. Then, he slowly started to walk, not towards his car, but towards the edge of the parking lot where the dark fields began. He walked into the thick mist and was gone in 2 steps. I watched, perplexed. I was tempted to call out, but something about his deliberate, silent movement felt wrong. I finally shrugged him off as a weirdo and went back to work. After about 20 minutes, I saw the sedan's headlights flick on, and it slowly pulled away, its taillights vanishing into the fog. I never saw the man get back in. I figured he must have circled around. The next night, the fog was even thicker. At 2 a.m. on the dot, the same dark sedan pulled up to pump 3. A knot of ice formed in my stomach. The same man in the same sweatshirt got out. He filled his tank, paid, and then walked with that same smooth glide to the edge of the lot, disappearing into the mist. This was beyond weird. My heart was pounding. Was he scouting the place? I watched his car, and again, after about 20 minutes, the headlights came on and it drove away. My shift ended at 6 a.m., but I didn't feel safe until the sun was fully up. The third night, Thursday, the fog had lifted, leaving a clear, cold night. I felt a small sense of relief. Maybe he wouldn't come. But at 2 a.m. on the dot, the dark sedan pulled up to pump 3. My blood ran cold. He got out. This time, his face was partially visible. It was gaunt, unnaturally pale, and completely expressionless. His eyes were dark, deep-set, and utterly devoid of anything I recognized as human. He filled his tank, paid, and then walked to the edge of the parking lot. He stopped, turned, and just stood there, facing the gas station facing me. He was about 50 yards away, but I could feel his gaze as if he were right in front of me. He stood motionless. Then, slowly, almost mechanically, he raised his arm. He wasn't waving. He was pointing directly at me. A wave of pure terror washed over me. This wasn't a weird customer. This was a threat. I ducked below the counter, my heart hammering, fumbling for my phone. Who would I call? What would I say? A man is pointing at me? They'd think I was crazy. I peered cautiously over the counter. He was still there, a statue of malice. After what felt like an hour, but was probably 10 minutes, I heard the click of the pump nozzle being replaced. The car lights came on, and the sedan slowly pulled out. I stayed hidden for another 5 minutes, then called my manager, told him I was sick, locked up, and ran to my car. I took the next 2 nights off. When I finally returned on Sunday, I was a nervous wreck. Around 1 a.m., a trucker came in for coffee. As I was ringing him up, he glanced out the window. "Hey," he said, "you got any idea what that's all about?" He asked, pointing to pump number 3. My blood went cold. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Fat old sedan," he said. "It's just sitting there. Engine's running, but nobody's in it. Been there for at least 15 minutes now." I slowly turned my head. The dark sedan was there, idling. The nozzle was back in the pump. The driver's seat was empty. My mind raced. He always walked away. The car always left after 20 minutes. But I never actually saw him get back in. A chilling realization dawned on me. What if he never got back in the car? What if the car was a decoy? And where had he gone? I told the trucker to wait and called 911. The police arrived and cautiously approached the car, finding it empty. They ran the plates. It had been reported stolen 3 days prior. They reviewed the security footage. They saw the man get out and walk off. They saw the car, minutes later, just drive away. The footage was grainy, but it was clear enough to show an empty car moving on its own. They had no logical explanation. I quit that job the next day. I couldn't stomach another night alone. I still have a recurring nightmare where the man gets out of the car, points, and this time, walks straight towards the front door.